Okay, let's try and unpack this because the number alone is, well, it's staggering. We are talking about a new annual fee connected to H-1B visa applications. $100,000.
Yeah.
That's not just an increase. It feels like a massive financial wall suddenly going up against skilled migration into the U.S.
It absolutely does feel like that. And the sheer scale of it is why this deep dive is so important right now. We're looking at a really major policy shift driven by a recent executive order. And just to give you some perspective, the current fees,
Yeah,
the standard ones for an H-1B, they usually top out around, what, $2,500 total? Maybe a bit more with premium processing.
right, in that ballpark.
So jumping from that high end, maybe $4,500 to a flat annual $100,000 fee,
Yeah.
it's just explosive. And we're already seeing these immediate, very strong and totally conflicting reactions from the government, from tech companies, the international community. Everyone's reacting.
So our mission today, then, is to cut through some of that noise. We need to understand the administration's stated reason, which they're framing very clearly around prioritizing American workers, right?
Exactly. That's the line.
And weigh that against these really severe concerns being voiced. That this move is actually, shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah.
That it could stifle innovation, hurt the U.S. tech industry's edge globally.
Precisely. So maybe let's start with the specifics. What exactly are the hard details of this new rule?
Okay. The core policy, it's laid out in the presidential proclamation. It demands this huge $100,000 annual fee. It has to accompany or supplement H-1B petitions. And here's a really critical part. This is specifically for workers who are currently outside the United States.
Yeah, okay. Outside the U.S.
Yeah. And the effective date is September 21st, 2025. So very soon. And this restriction, it's initially set for 12 months, though it could be extended. It's like this immediate high-stakes countdown that seems to have the corporate world really scrambling.
And we really need to break down that hike for you listening. I mean, if you take that previous high-end fee, the $4,500 number, this $100,000 represents just a mind-boggling 2,111.1% increase.
Wow. Over 20 times higher.
Over 20 times the previous highest cost.
Yeah.
It's, the Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, he's already called this policy non-economic for many uses. It's clearly explicitly designed to be prohibitive.
It really sounds like a strategy to just eliminate the H-1B visa as a practical option for almost anything except maybe the absolute most critical, highest paid global roles. But why that specific number, $100,000? Does it seem arbitrary, or is there some kind of calculation behind it?
Well, that's a key point. It sounds arbitrary, maybe, but some analysts are suggesting this figure is actually quite deliberate. It seems like an attempt to neutralize the supposed cost advantage that particularly outsourcing firms might have enjoyed. The administration is claiming that some entry-level H-1B jobs cost companies about 36% less than hiring a traditional full-time American employee.
Okay, I see.
So by slapping on a $100,000 fee up front, they're basically trying to make that visa a kind of retroactive labor cost equalizer. If it costs you $100 just to bring the worker in, well, that 36% saving is suddenly gone, completely wiped out.
That suddenly makes the policy seem very, very targeted.
It does, and there's more. The proclamation also included two other big regulatory instructions that kind of reshape the whole system. The Department of Labor. They've been told to revise prevailing wage levels upwards.
I mean, they have to pay more anyway.
Exactly. Even for the visas that do still get approved, the worker has to be paid more across the board. And Homeland Security has been directed to prioritize only the highest skilled, highest paid H-1B workers. So it really reinforces this idea that the system's being refocused just on elite, specialized talent, not, entry-level staffing or backfilling roles.
Okay, so now we get to the core argument from the administration. They haven't been shy about this being about Americans first. What's the explicit reason they're giving for such a drastic shift?
Right, we've looked at the cost. Now, the why. The administration's stated goal, articulated by officials like Secretary Lutnick, is aimed right at discouraging companies from using foreign workers as, well, cheaper replacements for Americans. His message was pretty blunt. Train Americans, stop bringing in people to take our jobs. The idea is to clear the path for American STEM grads entering the workforce.
So it's being framed as fixing a broken system, one that was supposedly being deliberately exploited just for profit.
Precisely. The claim is the program's been deliberately exploited to replace Americans with lower paid labor. And they lean heavily on that statistic. We mentioned that H-1B outsourcing positions could cost 36% less than hiring equivalent full-time American staff.
And they have data to show how much that's changed the IT workforce overall, don't they?
Yes, the White House is definitely sounding the alarm about market saturation there. They point out that the share of IT workers holding H-1B visas has really shot up, from about 32% back in fiscal year 2003 to over 65% in recent years.
65%.
Wow. It's a huge shift in the makeup of that workforce. And they've also provided some specific kind of anecdotal evidence of displacement that really makes their argument hit home.
Yeah, share those examples, because the details I saw were pretty striking.
Okay, get this. One major company approved for over 5,000 H-1B workers in fiscal year 2025, yet at the same time, they conducted massive layoffs this year. Roughly 16,000 U.S. employees let go.
16,000 layoffs, 5,000 H-1Bs approved.
Yeah. And another example, an IT firm approved for nearly 1,700 H-1B workers, while simultaneously announcing they were dismissing 2,400 U.S. workers in Oregon just this past summer.
That data linking 16,000 layoffs to 5,000 H-1B approvals.
That looks damning.
But are critics saying that comparison is maybe misleading? Like, maybe those H-1B workers filled niche roles the laid-off staff couldn't do.
That is exactly the counter-argument critics are making. That the approvals might not directly map onto the layoff pool. Maybe the layoffs were in, non-technical areas or legacy departments. But the administration's narrative gets really potent because they add details, like stories of American IT workers allegedly being forced to train their own foreign replacement.
Wow.
Yeah, under strict NDAs, non-disclosure agreements right before being terminated, that kind of detail. It sounds like something out of a, bad movie.
And to make sure this rule isn't just ignored or worked around, the Department of Labor launched a specific enforcement effort alongside the fee.
Right, that's Project Firewall, launched the same day as the proclamation. Its stated goal is to target H-1B misuse, really scrutinize companies, make sure wages are fair. The administration wants to show this isn't just about collecting a fee, it's about regulation with teeth. The Secretary of Labor, Lori Chavez DeRemer, is apparently going to personally oversee the start of these investigations. And if companies are caught violating the rules, they face serious penalties, repaying back wages, even getting barred from the program entirely.
Okay, so that paints a picture of the government's crackdown financially and regulatorily. But of course, out in Silicon Valley and elsewhere, the reaction has been intense. Critics are calling this fee reckless, unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
What are the main concerns they're raising about the potential fallout?
The criticism really boils down to the fear that this is basically protectionism that will end up hurting U.S. competitiveness on the world stage. Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy, for instance, argued it'll cut America off from high-skilled workers. Workers who, he says, have always strengthened our workforce, fueled innovation, helped build entire industries. The core idea is the U.S. economy runs on global talent.
It's that brain drain argument, right? Yeah. These highly skilled people will just go somewhere else instead of dealing with this huge cost.
Absolutely. Former advisor Ajay Gatoria warned this massive fee could crush small businesses and startups. Companies that just don't have $100,000 per worker sitting around, even if they desperately need that specific person's skills. He predicted it'll act like a giant billboard pushing skilled professionals straight to competitors, Canada, Europe, wherever. And Khandarao Khan also emphasized the huge negative impact this could have on software and tech, affecting even U.S.-educated STEM talent who often rely on the H-1B path right after graduation. And they're already facing pressures from AI and tariffs, apparently.
And beyond the economic worries, just the sheer size of this fee, it seems to create a big potential legal problem for the policy itself.
It really does. Legal experts jumped on this immediately, raising sharp questions about whether a $100,000 charge is even legal. The key point here is that, unlike, say, a tariff, U.S. immigration law usually limits visa fees to covering the actual cost of processing and administering the program.
Right. The paperwork, the background check.
Exactly. And it's really hard to argue that a $100,000 fee per person reasonably reflects the cost of processing an application and doing a background check.
So if the government can't justify it based on those administrative costs, what does that make the fee, legally speaking?
It starts to look a lot like a punitive tax, essentially, and legal challenges are almost certain to argue that this policy goes beyond the executive branch's authority. It makes it highly vulnerable to what's called an ultra-vires claim, basically saying the administration acted beyond its legal power. That seems to be the main legal friction point that could potentially unravel the whole policy in court.
But regardless of how any lawsuits eventually play out, That September 21st deadline has created this immediate kind of frantic scramble among major U.S. employers. What are we seeing these big companies telling their staff right now?
They're issuing these urgent, very specific directives to employees who are currently outside the U.S. JPMorgan Chase, for instance, reportedly advised all its H-1B visa holders abroad to get back to the U.S. before 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time on September 21st.
Wow, down to the minute.
Yeah, emphasizing they need to be physically present in the country before the fee kicks in. Microsoft apparently issued similar instructions, urging both H-1B and H-4 employees, that's the visa holders' spouses and kids, to return and basically stay put in the U.S. for the foreseeable future.
So they're rushing to beat the clock, trying to save themselves that $100,000 cost for anyone who might need to re-enter after the deadline.
It's a massive tactical shift happening right now, and it hits one group particularly hard. U.S. government data shows that Indian professionals make up about 71% of all approved H-1B beneficiaries.
71%.
Yeah, which means the majority of companies scrambling right now are those that rely heavily on Indian talent pipelines.
So the whole business model for those big Indian IT outsourcing firms, that must be under immense pressure right now. Which companies are we talking about?
Well, the top recipients overall include giants like Amazon, TCS, Microsoft, Meta. They use a lot of H-1Bs. But when you think about the business model impact, it's those Indian IT outsourcing firms, Infosys, Tata Consultancy Services, TCS, Wipro. They've historically relied heavily on the H-1B to place engineers and developers onto U.S. projects, often as a lower-cost staffing solution. This new annual $100,000 cost per worker basically makes that entire placement strategy financially impossible.
It completely breaks the model.
Completely. It forces them into a total reevaluation of their global employment strategies. It could signal a massive shift in where U.S. contracted IT work actually gets done in the future.
Okay, so this deep dive has really shown us an administration moving aggressively, using this powerful financial tool, the $100K fee plus regulatory enforcement with Project Firewall, all framed as protecting domestic jobs. But on the flip side, you have the tech sector, lawmakers, arguing this is reckless, that it risks America's competitive edge, drives away talent. We need to keep that edge.
That's the fundamental conflict right there. Necessary domestic protection versus potentially crippling innovation. And the stakes are incredibly high for the future of the U.S. tech workforce. We've seen outsourcing models threatened. U.S. tech giants are scrambling.
So here's maybe the provocative thought for you, our listener, to chew on today. Given the high chance of legal challenges to this fee and the clear goal of forcing companies to change how they hire, how will the inevitable shift play out? Will companies end up paying significantly higher wages here in the U.S.? Or will we see a massive accelerated offshoring of jobs? And how will that outcome ultimately affect the career paths for American STEM graduates, the very group this policy supposedly aims to protect? The ripples from this single $100,000 fee, they're going to reshape the global tech landscape for years, probably long before the courts even settle the policy itself.